so we can just start now. Great, we can start now. Yay. Thank you for helping lead in love. Yeah, great. It's always beautiful to hear people try and sing together and be together. My name's Jyoti Fernandes. I work with the Landworkers Alliance as the campaigns and policy coordinator, and I have an amazing team that I work with across the Landworkers Alliance to try and promote a better food system. And one of our big campaigns this year is focused on agrobiodiversity. Supporting agrobiodiversity is part of our wider work to support diversity across the board. It's something I deeply, deeply believe in, is that diversity, embracing diversity in all of its forms, is a form of resilience, deep resilience to life. And it's also a way to just embrace life and love life. And with the agrobiodiversity campaign, we are putting it forward not as just as something that's infinitely and intricately beautiful in and of itself. Agrobiodiversity, the colors, the smells, the taste, the way it integrates and folds so beautifully together in the web of life, all of that in and of itself is a wonderful thing to protect. It's incredibly precious, and it's, a part of something that just has its own inherent worth to protect. But it's also something that's very much a part of our strategy for creating a better future, a more resilient and adaptable future in the face of climate chaos and biodiversity loss and the crises that we face. Agrobiodiversity performs a very, very important function, and it's very important to restore agrobiodiversity in order to have a strand of activity that's really healing all these multiple crises that we face and putting it forward into something that's very much fit for the future. A lot of the talk about agrobiodiversity I find in England, about rare breeds and heritage orchard crops and the different kinds of traditional seeds and things. Sometimes it can seem like it's something that's talking very much about an affection for the past. Oh, it's really great because didn't we used to do these things? It used to be really cool because it was part of our history. And it's really cool today because, people used to do this sort of thing. But it's really important that past knowledge we weave into our future way of being. It's not something of the past. It's very much one of the tools that we need to move forward into the future. And in fact, I find one of our most important tools for moving into the future. And in a way that we can retain beauty and meaning and that intricate web of life into the future, rather than the future being about everything being very technological, and a little bit stark and a little bit corporate controlled and, very modern, It's extremely modern. So I've just spent at the climate change talks in Dubai I was there for at least 3 weeks, and the talks have been going on for quite a long time. And biodiversity within that is something that we were trying to support as a tool for resilience to climate change, and specifically with agrobiodiversity. And so part of my work there, representing La Via Campesina. I wasn't officially representing La Via Campesina because we boycotted because of the way that Palestine was treated within the talks officially, but unofficially being there to try and represent the fact that there's certain packages within the climate change talks, with the adaptation package and with the loss and damages package. The support for agrobiodiversity on a global level, it was one of the most important things that they can be doing to financially support programs for supporting agrobiodiversity across the planet. And there's a few reasons for that. Across the planet, we're going to be facing huge amounts of fluctuation in weather patterns. We all know this. There's going to be a lot of flooding. There's going to be a lot of droughts. There's going to be situations where seed is going to have to be highly adaptable to local climate conditions as things gradually change and shift. In fact, it's not so gradual anymore. The more I heard the reports that were being read out daily at the climate change talks, it was obvious that actually things are going to be shifting far more quickly than we are really able to almost comprehend. And so we need highly adaptable seed varieties, and we need highly adaptable food systems where we're not putting all our eggs in one basket. In fact, we're spreading them as far out as we can, because we don't really know what we're going to need, but we're going to have to put everything out there to make sure that we have something that will work if we're going to be able to feed the planet as it gets progressively more chaotic. And agrobiodiversity works in a couple ways with that. It means that we can survive these weather changes by having animals that are more compatible with low input systems. So we can have animals like rare breed livestock that are actually compatible with wildflower meadows, with low input systems that don't use loads of nitrate-based, grass, nitrate fertilizer-fed grass, ones that can manage these kind of biodiverse meadows and those types of systems, and then don't use loads of soya. It's soya that destroys the Amazon. When you grow vast acreages of soya, and that comes in as animal feed, and then you have cows eating this, actually, if you use a rare breed cattle, they might not need all that soya, that kind of thing. So it's adaptable with those kinds of systems. And it also means with things like seed, that we have seed that can sometimes be drought resistant, that can sometimes deal with floods, and have a mixture of different crop varieties being grown, that sometimes one thing will work and other times other things will work. And if one goes down, at least something else doesn't fail. And so that's incredibly important through the adaptation packages that all of our governments are supporting, that we actually support programs that support agrobiodiversity. Here in the UK, that would look like support through the ELMS program and other future farming programs to make sure we support packages that help farmers breed for agrobiodiversity and do the important work that these farmers will be talking about today, and all sorts of things. And there's one fact on the seed level I wanted to share with you. It's a fact from the ETC group that says that peasant seed breeders, people breeding agrobiodiverse varieties of seed, the greatest innovators and scientists on this planet, breed 2.1 million varieties of seed. 2.1 million varieties of seed, which are open source, that can be shared freely as a global commons without a corporation benefiting and financially profiting from the sharing of that knowledge. Where the industrial food chain, this is big agribusiness corporations like Monsanto and Syngenta, breeding varieties, only breed 137 different varieties, 137 versus 2.1 million. And 16 main crops are the one where the bulk of that funding goes to, and half of that goes to one crop, maize, right? And the majority of those crops cost millions to produce. Lots of them are genetically modified. And the profit from those seeds, which cannot be shared freely, which are not global commons, go to multinational corporations that progressively take over our food chain. So think about the difference there and the amount of resilience for our future food supplies between 2.1 million varieties and 16, almost down to one variety that is being invested in. And when I was at the climate change talks, it was incredibly obvious that agribusinesses were there heavily lobbying for the money that was coming from the adaptation packages, from the loss and damages packages at the climate change talks, for that money to be being fed into genetically modified crops, to the industrial food chain, to these corporations, saying that they're breeding climate resilience. And there was very little talk of all this amazing work being done on the ground by farmers, through open source technologies, using heritage varieties, using rare breeds, using agrobiodiverse seed to be able to support that work that's going on. And in fact, the opposite is happening. There's legislation that's actually making it illegal to commercially produce many, many varieties of these seeds. And there's all sorts of legislation that's actively blocking the adaptation and the use and the sharing of this knowledge of these types of seeds. So we're campaigning to try and change this across La Via Campesina, to try and make a huge amount of awareness there of the kind of seed breeding programs and the kind of support that grassroots farmers on the ground need to do this important work to preserve biodiversity. And I'm going to stop now in talking about that and let some of the farmers doing this important work talk to you about that. And hopefully you'll be inspired to get behind us to try and inspire the powers that be to support agrobiodiversity going forward. So we're going to start with Tom Adams. Tom manages an organic fruit tree nursery in Shropshire using regenerative methods in an agroforestry system. He specializes in hard-to-find apple varieties from the English-Welsh borderlands, and is building a collection of local varieties from all over the country, helping to protect plant biodiversity and ensure that this living heritage continues to be enjoyed for generations to come.
Thank you. Just waiting for the slides to come on. So yeah, I run a 6.5 acre organic fruit tree nursery. It's an agroforestry system. Can you go to the next slide, please? So yeah, it's on the North Shropshire, North Wales border. We grow, like Jyoti said, a wide range of heritage varieties, some that we've rescued from the brink of extinction. Yeah, we're Soil Association certified organic. And I want to talk about how biodiversity works in our system and how it has been designed into our system as well. Next slide, please. So I've had this plot for 5.5 years. I spent 2 years designing the space beforehand, trying to get it right. And this was the plan. And we have a very biodiverse system. And it's based on creating our own ramial chipped wood. That's what the whole system is based on, creating our own soil improvement, pest control, and to some extent disease control on site. So it's a closed loop system. So we have a range of coppice areas, mostly willow, some of which are also native broadleaf, and that the cropping spaces are interspersed in between the willow and the native broadleaf. Next slide, please. So not so clear, but that's what the field looks like after 5 years. That's, like I say, we spent 2 years designing and observing, so that's only 3 years worth of growth there. And it's a very biodiverse system. Essentially, we're putting stuff everywhere. Next slide, please. So, like I say, we've got this closed loop system based on creating ramial wood chip that we use to mulch our nursery stock. So the idea is we have no bare soil whatsoever. The ramial chipped wood is how we grow our fertility in the form of mulch. Next slide, please.
What does ramial mean?
Ramial chipped wood is, it means under 7 centimeters diameter, essentially. So the smaller the diameter, the more nutrients there are in that wood. You have a higher nitrogen to carbon ratio than you do in larger wood. It breaks down quicker. And the closer to the tip of a branch you are, the more nutrients there are. So it's an amazing compost. Next slide, please. So yeah, it's created from branches, hardwood branches under 7 centimeters. And you can see the picture on the left-hand side there. That's maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks after the wood has been chipped, and you get this amazing fungal duff going on that works its way into the soil. Next slide, please. So this wood chip, like I say, the whole system is based on creating enough wood chip for us. And the wood chip is used for mulch as a nursery stock for the orchard and for the orchard. Our root stocks are in the ground for 2 years, and the wood chip is down for 2 years, and it works really well. And it has many different functions. So it works as a weed suppressant, minimizing the need for tillage. It retains moisture. So even within the last couple of years where we've had really dry seasons, we've not needed to irrigate our nursery stock whatsoever. It's a great soil amendment. It's full of nutrients and breaks down to a rich compost. It stimulates white rot fungal activity, which helps to increase nutrient uptake within the soil. It neutralizes acidic soil. So our site is slightly acidic, and rather than spreading lime everywhere, we decided to concentrate on raising the pH in localized areas using the compost that we from the wood chip. It increases the number of beneficial microorganisms in the soil. It increases soil organic carbon content, and it increases the soil bulk density and encourages larger structural porosity. And yeah, next slide, please. And as well as that, there's even more. You know, it's the coppices that form the alley cropping systems have lots of other benefits as well. They're a windbreak, and so they shelter the growing crops, creating a beneficial microclimate. They act as a great wildlife corridor, increasing habitat area for birds and insects. They increase water infiltration through the soil, helping to reduce runoff, which, you know, with all the rain we're having at the moment is so important. They're a source of craft material, such as willow for basketry, and they're a moist, shady growing space for mushroom cultivation. So just within this one strip of coppice, it does so much for us. And we have, I think it was about 5 different coppice areas. Next slide, please. So, excuse me a sec. So essentially, we've got mini woodlands within our system. And if we've got woodlands, we've got woodland edge. So we're utilising those woodland edges to implement forest garden principles. Next slide, please. So essentially, we have a north, east, south, and a west woodland edge, and we're utilising those spaces. You can see the picture on the right there. All our rows run north-south for maximum sunlight inception. On the west side of the coppices, where we get the late, stronger afternoon sun, we're planting a whole range of soft fruit. So here, next to the cherry orchard, and in between the cherry orchard and the willow coppice, we have Japanese wineberries in this row. In other rows, there are other soft fruit, black currants, red currants. And it's a case of filling the space with as much useful stuff as possible. You know, like perhaps in a more conventional system, this area might be mown on a regular basis, but it's a case of filling these spaces with as much useful stuff as possible. Next slide, please. The east side of the coppices, we are filling up with big blocks of comfrey, and I think we've got about 11 different types of mint at the moment. So we have blocks of comfrey mint, all the way up. We've now planted these blocks. We don't have to do anything to these. We can leave them alone, do their own thing, and they'll attract predators and pollinators. But if we want to, there's so much that we can do with these things as well. Comfrey is amazing for compost. I imagine mint, a bit like nettles, is going to make an amazing compost. And there's so much more that can be done with the comfrey, lotions and potions and ointments, and the mint is great for as a foliage for cut flowers. It's a good herb. It attracts predators and pollinators. Now that it's there, it does so much for us. Next slide, please. We have lots of floral strips, which are high in nectar and pollen. So again, the biodiversity is attracting predators and pollinators onto our site. One of our main pests is aphids, and we have thousands of ladybirds on site. I haven't seen many lacewings, but with plenty of hoverflies as well. Hopefully the lacewings will come at some point, but we have to do very little pest control ourselves. Next slide, please. Yep, and again. So there's a hoverfly, ladybird larvae. Next slide. Okay, so as well as attracting the predators on site, we have plenty of bug hotels to keep them there over winter, and it seems to be doing the job. We do have to do a little bit of hand squishing of aphids, but generally not much. Next slide. So bird boxes in the coppice, especially blue tits. They eat aphids. They're voracious predators of aphids. So creating the right habitat for such creatures increases the biodiversity and it increases your pest control. The idea is that, you know, we've designed a system whereby nature is doing, you know, the natural system is doing as much work for us as possible. Next slide. So, yeah, diversity is the key. And like I say, we're filling spaces with as much as we can. Everywhere, every gap is being filled with something useful. Next slide. So we create this really healthy growing system with great pest control, really good soil improvement, and all that goes to producing really nice, healthy soil, a great growing environment, and really good quality trees. These are one-year-old trees with lovely root systems, really strong growth. And I put that down to the great growing system that we've got there. Lovely microclimate, really nicely aggregated soil, really well-fed soil from the wood chip. There's also salicylic acid in the willow, which leaches out of the wood chip and can help with fungal diseases. Next slide, please. And again. And again. So as part of our rotation, so we have a 7-year rotation with our apple trees. We don't put apple trees in the same place for 7 years to combat replant disease. We have other businesses working on site. We have a cut flower business, a chamomile tea business, and a veg growing business, all working within the rotation. And green manures within that rotation. So as well as biodiversity, there's a real diversity of crops and businesses and people on that site as well, which, yeah, and people are part of the biodiverse system. Next slide. That's it.
Great. Look, biodiversity, it's so great. I love it, I love it, love it. Okay, so next we have Hannah Thorogood from Inkpot Farm. She's a permaculture and regenerative agricultural farmer, consultant, teacher, and senior tutor from Lincolnshire. She runs the Inkpot Organic Farm as a single parent along with her twin teenage daughters. Woohoo! We're girl-run farms. I love it. I've got 4 daughters too. Where they rear native breeds of cattle, sheep, and poultry. She has an MSc in organic agriculture, diploma in permaculture design, and is the Pasture for Life regional facilitator for East Midlands. I lost my glasses.
Hello, you lovely lot, and hello, you lovely lot at home as well. It's lovely to have you with us. Okay, so I'll talk into this one. Is this one on? Yeah. Can I have the next slide, please? So yeah, as Jyoti said, it's me and my daughters. When we often talk about us and we and stuff, people often, as a woman in farming, sorry to mention that one, then people often, as anyone comes onto the farm, people are often looking over your shoulder looking for the farmer, and it gets a little bit boring. So I just wanted to clarify, I am the farmer, and they are the farmers too, Elizabeth and Martha. So next slide, please. So the Inkpot is an organic farm in South Lincolnshire. We are also really proudly a permaculture demonstration centre, permaculture demonstration farm. We're certified organic, and we're a Great Taste Award producer because we've won so many Great Taste Awards, they just call us a producer now. And that, I think, comes down to the way that we farm and the choice of animals that we use. So this is the home field. It started out as an 18-acre field. We're now 130 acres that we rent 7 different landlords. In fact, as of last week, 136 acres, because fields get kind of passed our way now. It's really quite exciting. Sometimes we're even turning down fields. Next slide, please. So this is a quick overview of the kind of things that we do. We've got too many things going on. That we have a couple of 100 sheep. We'll talk about those. 16 head of cattle. Original population Lincoln Red. We've got a diverse range of egg layers with 50 to 100. Actually, on my way home from here tomorrow night, I'll be taking 50 hens home in the back of the car, as you do, you know, be fine. And we normally run 100 or 200 Norfolk black turkeys for Christmas. We also have beehives and a number of different breeds of dogs. So next slide, please. So one thing that we're really, really proud of, that kind of soul food for us, is the biodiversity on the farm. And that came really from a real blank canvas. So we acquired, you know, the field was put into our hands 14 years ago, and it was a knackered, conventionally managed, very heavy, right now very, very saturated clay, north-facing slope soil with zero diversity. It had been sprayed for decades and decades. And no disrespect to anyone that's spraying, everyone's doing the best they can with the information they have available to us. But the field was dead. It was completely dead. And 14 years on, we have so much life. It's noisy out there, you know. You kind of there's so much going on out there. I could just spend kind of 10 minutes just reeling through the diversity that's out there. But these are some of the things that we have. We have a fantastic wildlife photographer who comes just for the fun of it to take photos of the stuff that's there. That's how kind of cool it is. So we've got some of his lovely photos. That's Wayne Munford. Next slide, please. So before I go any further, what I really want to do is just take a moment for us all to acknowledge and share gratitude for people who have been the guardians of the seeds and the breeds through history across the world. Because people say we stand on the shoulders of giants. Well, that sounds a bit uncomfortable and a bit unfriendly. I think that we're kind of held in the hands of those that came before us, and that those are with us now. And everyone who has saved their own seed or bought heritage varieties or worked for years and often generations to preserve certain breeds and certain varieties, I just really want to say thank you, because we are only able to do this because of them. And it's quite bang on trend now to have rare breeds and have different things, and it wasn't for years and years. And so there's been fantastic organisations like the Rare Breed Survival Trust, and I know there's lots of different organisations now that do it, so I don't want to name them all and miss anyone out or get into politics, but I really want to thank them, and I really want to thank, you know, there's lots of talk about seed varieties, but the different breeds of animals, they have been kept alive often by really small farmers, and they're often being the weirdos, you know, when all the kind of scowled upon by the farmers with the big beefy breeds and all the kind of commercially viable ones, when these weirdos in their knitted jumpers have been keeping all these strange varieties going, breeds going for generations. You know who you are, thank you. And go home and thank your parents and your grandparents and the weirdos in your villages for doing it, because we really, really need to thank them. So for myself, I've got my mum, and I want to name check 3 farmers. That's Kate Thorogood, there's Pat Chamberlain and Di Smith, and they'll be going, oh, why are we mentioning them? They're ladies that are in their 70s and 80s, and they all run their own herds of Dexters, and it's through, and they've been doing them for decades, all across the country in different places, and they're all amazing women, and they kind of feed the fire in my belly, and I think we all have people like that. They're just 3 women who've worked with Dexters for decades. You all know those people who've been doing that for decades and generations. So I'll stop banging on about them, but it's those people that we really need to acknowledge today. So, on the farm, I'll do a kind of quick breeze through of the birds that we mainly run Norfolk. I was going to say Norfolk Horn. Now, if anyone knows their breeds, that's not a turkey, that's a sheep. But we've done Norfolk Horn sheep. But we have Norfolk Black turkeys, and we've tried different varieties of turkeys, but we found the Norfolk Blacks are easier to pluck. Sorry, veggies. And with the chickens, with the layers, we deliberately have a number of different breeds that we work towards together. So sometimes it's about the rare breeds, and sometimes it's about just having the diversity, so having 4 or 5 different types. So I'm a permaculture teacher and practitioner through and through, And one of the principles of permaculture is to use and value diversity, because where we have diversity, we have resilience. And folks, we need resilience, and so there are so many things that have been shaped through history where we have not had diversity, and that's been the problem. Just look at I'm not a historian, but the origins of the potato famine came about because there was not enough diversity of potato. It wasn't because of blight, it was because of the lack of blight-resistant available potatoes at that time. So we need to stop walking blindly into this monochrome world that we're creating, where we have access to one or two different breeds of things. So I see it day after day on our farm that these kind of chickens that get the novelty prize because our customers can open up their box and have blue eggs and yellow eggs. Yeah, blue eggs and white eggs and brown eggs. It looks nice. It's a great commercial thing. It's not a great commercial venture. We have about 40 customers. We're not huge. But it's the resilience that gives us through the year, because at this time of year right now, for some reason, the white egg layers and the blue egg layers can cope with this mud, and they're happily laying away, while the brown egg layers are going, done. I will start again in spring. Tell us when the sun comes back. So we can carry on. If we just had the brown egg layers, we wouldn't have any eggs at all at the moment. So we don't know that until we try different things. Okay, next slide, please. Oh, there we are, talking about them again. And I think it just looks really nice having the different colours out there, the different breeds. Next slide, please. So these have come out quite dark, but these are our cows. So these are original population Lincoln Reds. Now, some of the things about the native breeds, that they give us traits. And it's not just native. I think we can get really puritanical about native, non-native, rare, not rare. It's about looking at a breed that works for you, for your context. So we're in Lincolnshire. It's a no-brainer to have Lincoln Red cattle. I realised there was a super strain, a kind of an original population of Lincoln Reds, and I thought, let's go with that. And a lot of when you pick the right breed for your context, you'll have different reasons for choosing those breeds. Oh, okay, I'll speak fast. And, so those things that we're looking for are hardiness, temperament, character, flavour, low input, as Jyoti said. All our grazers are 100% pasture only, so we're part of Pasture for Life. But also they've got these really strong natural instincts. So I love this one of Twilight being a water buffalo. When it was very, very hot, we give them access. They're normally daily moved on mob grazing system. When it goes over 35 degrees, we let the fences go and they can be wherever they need to be. And the same we do it at minus 15, because we have gone down to minus 15. And last year we went over 40. And these animals can cope with it because they do sensible things like this and go, oh, I'm not just going to drink the pond, I'm going to get in the pond. So I think we could all identify with that at that temperature. Next slide, please. So then on to the sheep. Whereas I go very puritanical with the cows, the sheep are massively diverse, and it's deliberate blending of lots of different breeds to get what we want. And that is fertility and mothering, good mothering, flavour, but also the fleece. So this is our wool here. We've got lots of different colours. As you can see, we've got the different colours in the flock, which gives us different colours in the wool. And so together, they blend into quite a boring grey, really. But it's very soft. Knit with it. It's lovely. But at the mill right now, we've got 5 different colours coming through. Yeah? Okay. So if we just zoom very quickly through, is that okay? So if we can just zoom through the slides there's a few to go, and I'll just do it quickly. Next slide, please. Yeah, so these are some of our beautiful rams, deliberately blending together Shetland, Wiltshire Horn, Romney, Icelandic, and we've put in a few others with varying success, but deliberately blending them. So the things that we're working for now is we've got the flavour, we've got the fleece, we've got the variety, is the size. So we're increasing the size and working on worm and fly resistance. Next one, please. Which brings us lovely lambs and lovely wool. Next slide, please. And lovely wool. Next slide. And it comes back round full loop. We talked about the heart thing of the biodiversity,
but also there's a real connection that you can have to your animals when there's a diversity and they look different. Okay, and I think, is that the end? Next slide? Yeah, there we are. Sorry, thank you.
I'm going to pass on to Henrietta. Yeah. No, that's all right.
I'll say it.
The main thing is I know she feeds such lovely, lovely, lovely stuff.
Does this? Okay. So I have a choice of this one or this. Okay. I'll figure it out. Hello, everyone. So I'm Henrietta Inman. I'm a cook, baker and land worker and founder of Wakelands Bakery at Wakelands Organic Agroforestry Farm in Suffolk that you can see here on the screen. I'm going to talk a little bit about our practice in our bakery, but also my own personal experience with creating with and eating agrobiodiversity. So, sorry, I feel a little nervous. I'm just going to slow my heart rate a bit. So before coming to Wakelands, I worked in professional kitchens in London for about 8 years, and then back home in Suffolk, where I grew up writing a few books on baking. From working in these London kitchens, which are very conventional, in our very conventional sort of hospitality and food retail industry, which we can say very much works alongside our conventional agriculture system, to then coming to this wonderful place here and creating a bakery founded upon this diversity. I felt a huge change in myself over the past 3 years of having this bakery and being here. It actually really helped me overcome an eating disorder, which I think says a huge amount about the power of agrobiodiversity, not just in sort of the survival of our food system, but so much more, from helping our climate crisis to our socioeconomic and many cultural crises we face today. And I'll talk a bit more about that. So just a little bit, I'm going to give some history of Wakelands and some context just so you're aware of where our bakery is. Wakelands is one of the earliest and most diverse agroforestry sites, which I really think is very evident here. As you can see it in the Suffolk monoculture is this wonderful oasis. So you can see the tree lines, which work with the arable alleys that are on a 5-year rotation of cereals, pulses, hemp, and with a herbal ley. And yeah, it just shows how abundant 56 acres of agrobiodiverse land can be. So the site was bought in 1992 by Martin and Anne Wolfe, and they immediately started to grow the trees that you can see here now, many of them over 30 years old now. Martin was a plant scientist and breeder, and in his and Anne's retirement, they wanted to experiment with ways of more farming in nature's image or more sustainable farming. And this, to Martin, who had a huge fascination with diversity, just meant diversity, diversity, diversity. The Organic Research Centre were based at Wakelands for many years with Martin and Anne, and Wakelands became known as a research and demonstration site for farmers wishing to see practical alternatives to more conventional agriculture. Slide 2, please. So you can see, as well as diversity among the crops and the trees, which you can see on the left of the slide, there's a huge amount of diversity within the crops at Wakelands with the development of the YQ, or the ORC Wakelands population wheat. This was 20 different parent plants, which were crossed every which way to make 190 children plants. And if one of those plants in the population fails due to disease or weather conditions, the others will still thrive. And you can just see with the comparison of the monoculture wheat to the population wheat just how diverse it is, and that diversity goes far beyond that sort of surface, beautiful surface appearance, but also the beauty is really within in the diverse genetics. The YQ is still grown at Wakelands now and on many other farms all over the UK and actually the world. And we use it in our bakery most days. Next slide, please. So with Martin and Anne's passing and their return back to the earth, they're buried under 2 oak trees at Wakelands. Their sons, David and Toby Wolf, and their families have taken on the land, with David and Amanda, who you can see here on the left, now the main custodians of the land. The organic farming continues alongside short chains or short food and craft chains and enterprise stacking. So there's Real Veg in the top left, who are a community-supported agriculture scheme, Kitty and Claire, who make hemp, or grow hemp even, to make beautiful fabric like this, naturally dyed with things like woad and marigold. There's Willow Phoenix, who are Adam and Emma, making wonderful willow crafts with the willow, like beautiful willow butterfly wings and baskets. And then there's Jill, who has Bee More Bee, which is natural beekeeping. And her bees really wouldn't be there without the agrobiodiversity. There's also local craftspeople who use the hazel for hedge laying. There's accommodation on site. Research still continues. There's our bakery, and there's lots more going on. Next slide, please. So the agroforestry really inspires and enables all of these businesses, just like Tom and Hannah's as well. But it also brings so much more. By all collaborating and working together, from collaborating with the agroforestry to working with each other, we're noticing much sort of going beyond ourselves, beyond ego to eco, we could say, or self-care to collective care. We're working much more as a community, which is bringing health and well-being. We're strengthening the local economy, keeping traditional crafts alive, enriching the culture. And this is, all our businesses are thriving, really, at the same time as the agrobiodiversity. So we're thriving together. We're all nature. Next slide, please. So, all of these sort of ideas and ways of being really overlap into how we work in our bakery. So we are what are we? We're an agroecological, 100% wholemeal, sourdough, stone ground flour, diverse cereal seed bakery. One of the... Thank you. What? I don't think I can. One of the only ones, actually the only one of its kind in Suffolk. And our mission, which it hangs on the wall in our bakery, I painted it a few years ago and I need to update it, as you can see. It's to create delicious food for our community with the beautiful abundance blossoming around us at Wakelands Agroforestry and from other agroecological producers, and demonstrate this as a model of resilience, productivity, holistic productivity, and longevity for all beings. Next slide, please. So how do we fulfill this mission? Well, first of all, we're in charge of harvesting all of the fruit, and we also use all of the wheat, lentils, and other food grown in the crop alleys, such as the vegetables. We harvest the abundance, such as you can see the many different varieties of plums. There's over 15 varieties, over 40 varieties of apples, squash in the autumn, beautiful quince, pears, lots of different flowers that we use for things like tisanes and also for cakes and things, and more plums and apples in the bottom that I harvested with some baking friends. So we harvest very gratefully the abundance, and next slide, please. We then we transform it, and we bake YQ local loaves for our local shops, Bread Club subscribers, and Hodmedods online. And then the food from the crop alleys and the tree lines comes together when we cater for on and off farm events such as open days, weight cleanse courses, and accommodation as well. So really the agroforestry, in the way, the sort of diverse alleys and tree lines of the agroforestry really inspires not only how we cook and bake, but also how we run our business. It has many diverse income streams which bring our business lots of resilience and so much more. So yeah, you can see many different jams, chutneys, pickles, cakes with lots of dried fruit from the farm, plum tart, and more, and apple juice as well. And it's really delicious. Next slide, please. So what are we learning? What does agrobiodiversity mean to us? And what are we learning from it? So I think, first and foremost, as bakers and cooks who have a real responsibility to feed our customers and ourselves and the whole community of the farm the most nourishing and flavoursome food, this is the most nourishing and flavoursome food. So we're feeling just from our personal experiences, but also hearing feedback from people who visit the farm, that it's so incredibly flavoursome. And if it's deeply, truthfully flavoursome, it is the most nutritional food we can eat and the most delicious. And we're hearing more and more how that lack of diversity in our gut microbiomes is linked to so many chronic illnesses that we face. So we really, really need that diversity and that nutrition. It's also bringing so much pleasure and also satiating us sensorially and nutritionally as well. There's also a lot of research now saying that I listened to something very recently on the food programme, and a lady was saying that our food that's travelled all around the world and distributed in our global food system doesn't contain the microbes that make us feel full. And I think you feel that when you eat it. We're never really quite satisfied. And also sensorially, we're not it's all quite a monotonous texture, flavour. We're not really chewing, our senses aren't being enlivened and satisfied. So this food is really the food that pleasures us, the food that satisfies us, and it's quality, not quantity. It's not empty, it's completely full. Again, helping with many health crises we face today. Okay, I'll be very quick. This is thanks, Jyoti. Also having this connection to the land and this sort of beauty is bringing a feeling of sort of awe and wonder, and it's also known now that that sort of connection to nature and the wonder it brings us brings, again, a feeling of something bigger than ourselves and sort of gratitude and empathy and kindness. And I think this goes from the land, from the produce we're so grateful to have and then use, and then to how we work in our bakery with kindness for our ingredients and kindness from one another. So, probably very importantly, it's enabling us to create a financially viable business, but also a very resilient business in so many more ways. It's bringing us agency. Much of the food from the current system it kind of de-skills us with its ready meals and monotony, and in many ways dehumanizes us, whereas this brings agency, purpose, play, fun, fulfillment, and so much creativity. And so much of that creativity comes from really being guided by what's around us and letting that lead us. And that sort of feeling of using what's there, what we have, is really creating a food culture and tastes of places. Imagine if we could go from Oxford now back to Suffolk and somewhere else and travel all over the UK, and every different place had its own flavour and own identity. So finally, there's the witnessing, the picking, the processing, and then we eat it. And I think then even more sort of change happens within us. We're surrounded by so much monotony in our culture, and there's such a sort of this idea that homogeneity and looking the same, being the same is sort of good or normal. It's quite hard to be different, have different body shapes or There's quite a lot of monotony in our art and so much more. Whereas when we eat diversity, when we connect to nature and understand that nature thrives in diversity and we're part of nature, we understand that we too are part of that diversity and we are diverse and beautiful. I think that really helped with my own healing, as well as having work with a purpose and as part of a collective. I think we're understanding, we're witnessing and seeing just how abundant agrobiodiversity is and how in its interconnection and interdependence, it's abundant and productive. And we're understanding that as humans working in our community, from with the agroforestry to with each other to with our customers, we are also just like nature. We are holistically productive and thrive in our connections as well. And all of those things are bringing a sense of learning what it is to be human again, really, learning how to live again in our senses, and learning that being part of human is interconnecting and loving. So final slide, please. Yeah, so I think, so we stencil all of our loaves and try and sort of describe that sort of wider, more holistic impact of an agrobiodiverse, just food system. And I'll just end with this quote from Charles Darwin that Martin often used as well. So he said, "In the general economy of any land, the more widely and perfectly the animals and plants are diversified for different habits and life, so will a greater number of individuals be capable of their supporting themselves." Thank you so much.
So beautiful. I'm going to have to leave you now because I just got a text that I need to be in lunch with the Secretary of State at 12. So I'm going to run over there, but we're going to talk about agrobiodiversity and the agrobiodiversity scheme and why they should support it within DEFRA. So it's all in the greater good. And I'm going to give you Patrick to speak to you for a little bit about how the international scene with the UK's commitments to biodiversity, internationally with the Convention on Biodiversity and the legislation, etc., fits in to trying to support all of this kind of amazing work that's being done on the ground by people every day, supporting all this amazing biodiversity. And then I'm going to open it. It's going to be open to questions, and Hannah's going to facilitate the questions for you all to direct to the speakers here to answer. And yeah, hopefully you can just facilitate yourselves a little bit. I'm sorry about this. I'm sorry about it. I'm sorry about this. So I'm always prepared in these kind of lunches with these kind of people to hold the fork up and envision them through prison bars. All right then. And also join the Landworkers Alliance if you are not already a member. We're going to carry on with the agrobiodiversity campaign. Just to let you know, we have no funding for our agrobiodiversity campaigning and no funding yet for any of the work that we're trying to do to try and leverage money from the climate adaptation and loss and damages packages towards this work that is incredibly important, happening all across the planet by peasant farmers and small-scale farmers and people on the ground trying to preserve agrobiodiversity. So if you have any means of trying to help support that campaign, if you can stay in touch with what we're putting out there, because we're going to be asking people to talk to their country negotiators and to people like the Secretary of State, etc., to make sure that when the UK donates its money and puts its money into these loss and damages and adaptation packages, that we're earmarking some of it to go for agrobiodiversity work. It's a very specific campaign, and if we can leverage some of the billions that are out there, take them away from multinationals and put them into this amazing kind of work, it's going to make a huge difference. So please stay in touch with that campaign and help us with that work. This is all very concrete, and it's all very real, and it's all really amazing, and it's the great turning, okay?
I don't envy her. Much more interesting to talk with all of you and find out your experiences of working with what I must say I call agricultural biodiversity. And always have. I've worked with this all my life and always use that term because it conveys the cultural dimension of biodiversity. Agricultural biodiversity is, as you wonderful people have been saying, and Jyoti in her introduction, is not just seeds and breeds, the diversity of seeds and breeds, but it's the diversity in the soil, the pollinators. In fact, it's the biodiversity in all the places where humans interact with nature. It is the largest subset of biodiversity in the world because humans have actually penetrated most parts of the terrestrial and lots of the marine biomes in the world. So agricultural biodiversity is a term I always use. Agrobiodiversity is shorter to say, and it's like agroecology, it's like agroforestry and all the rest of it. But agricultural biodiversity gives that wider dimension. I've worked with this all my life. My dad was a smallholder, always growing stuff. Presently, my little allotment in Rugby has 60 varieties of 30 different species crammed into its little space, and the plan is to have even more. But my professional work has been mainly in policy and practice all over the world on agricultural biodiversity, and particularly in negotiations in the FAO and the Convention on Biological Diversity on agricultural biodiversity. And very briefly, I just wanted to summarize, as Jyoti was asking, what's happening in the Convention on Biological Diversity. Set up one of the Rio Conventions along with climate change and desertification in 1992, agriculture got in there, thankfully, through the work of 6 valiant people in the late 80s and early 90s, to be part of the Convention of Biodiversity for the reasons I've just described. It is the dominant part of biodiversity on this planet. Yet, it has been significantly and systematically excluded from the negotiations in the Convention, to the extent that the new Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, to give its full title, which was agreed at the last COP15, has one target, Target 10, which deals with agricultural biodiversity specifically. And even within that, industry managed to squeeze out nearly all the dimensions of the things that you've been talking about and focus on sustainable intensification. And then in brackets, and agroecology. The effect and impact of corporations within the UN system is horrific. I think you heard Paul LaJoya talking about and others in the opening session. It's horrific. They manage to infiltrate, persuade countries through bribery, corruption. I don't know what methods they use. I'm sure the person with whom Jyoti is going to talk is part of that problem and is forgetting the importance of the knowledge, the skills, the innovation of farmers, of peasants, of pastoralists, of fisherfolk, in being able to work with nature and at the same time create a vast biodiversity of particularly the species with which on which we depend, and there are something like 7,000 of them. Not just the 12 that provide 75% of the food in the industrial food system. That's only for 30% of the world's population. The remainder, the 70% of the world's population, fed much more biodiversity, much more agroecologically. We forget that. We're blinded from it. Us sitting in our industrial food system, little cocoon here, forgets that most food producers in the world are not like us. They're black, they're brown, they're yellow. They work in fields, they work in paddies, they work in the pastures, in the seas. They have produced this wonderful biodiversity. So the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework has managed to squeeze agricultural biodiversity almost out of the picture, and instead have brought in, backed by the UK government, what they call the 30 by 30 project, which is the big triumph of COP15. And that has committed 100 and something countries to have 30% of their land by 2030 in protected areas. And what are protected areas? Protected areas are areas mostly devoid of people. But who are the custodians of biodiversity? The custodians of biodiversity are you, are us, are the food providers of the world, particularly the smaller scale food providers of the world. And so even in the august halls of the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity, the people who are the real custodians are almost squeezed out. Some recognition of the importance of indigenous peoples, some of local producers. The words are in there. But in reality, the big prize is for the corporates to expand their monocultural, biodiversity-free, almost biodiversity-free food production systems. I say food, I should say commodity production systems. So, in summary, I think it's important to think about how the kind of systems you've been describing can be outscaled, agroecologically, outscaled across all production systems. And when one looks at the vast monocultures of wheat or maize or rice or whatever, even there, if you had populations like the YQ population, that would have biodiversity within the field. And so we're looking at biodiversity not just at field margins, not just in protected areas, but biodiversity within the production system. And looking at production methods, agroecological production methods that are highly heterogeneous, highly biodiverse. And that way, yes, we'll be able to achieve some restoration of biodiversity. Just remember, as La Via Campesina says, and the International Planning Committee for Food Sovereignty, with which I've been closely involved over the years, peasants give life to biodiversity. Thank you.
Thanks so much. So I'm your stand-in to take the questions. So we have some time to take some questions from people here, and also if there's anyone online who wants to, we have that here too. So does anyone have any questions? We have a roving mic over here. Oh, sure. Okay, thank you. Yes, straight up, fast.
And because we're being live streamed and recorded, please wait for the mic and speak directly into it.
Thank you. So it's coming to you. Thanks.
Hi, question for Tom. What willow varieties do you use to make your wood chip?
We use Daphnoides, Viminalis, we got contorted willow, Chinese super willow, and coral bark willow. And it seems like from some research that I've seen from Bartlett trees, the more vigorous the willow, the less salicylic acid it contains. So corkscrew willow and Daphnoides are really high in salicylic acid. Viminalis is really low. But what we don't know is whether the low salicylic acid in Viminalis is good enough to help combat scab. Some trials have been carried out, but not to any major extent. But from what I gather, any kind of willow is good. But yeah, Viminalis is great because you get like 5 meters of growth in 2 years. But it's very low in salicylic acid. Yes, well, that and many other things, but the salicylic acid is good for scab in apples. Yeah. And how long do you compost the chip for? We use it straight away. Because it's ramial, because it's small diameter, it has a higher nitrogen to carbon content than larger diameter wood. It's fine to use on rootstocks immediately. Yeah. I don't think it would be good if you were using smaller plants like veg transplants, for example. I'm not sure, but I don't think it would be.
Any other questions?
Hi, yeah, my question's for Tom as well. I was wondering, your aerial picture looked like you were relatively close to woodlands, and whether or not you had considered or had any dormice on your site?
I haven't seen any, and there's no old coppice around, which I think dormice prefer, don't they? The coppice stools.
I think they're generally found in many broadleaf woodlands and some pine, but yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. The woodlands they're not so old. They're surrounded. They're edged by very mature trees, but some of the woodland is quite new. So I don't think so. I've not come across any.
No worries. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah, just there near where you are.
Hello. Question for Hannah, really, around the kind of how easy do you find it to access different breeds, and would you consider, or do you consider, like maintaining your own breeding flocks? So, poultry. Go on, poultry.
Okay. So it comes down to networks. How do we source different breeds? But I personally would never buy an animal from a market. I'd always make contact with the person. Breed societies, we have a lot to be grateful for, and sometimes some amusement found there in that if you ask someone from a breed society anything, then their breed is obviously the best in every case for everything. But they're so useful source of information, and they will normally be able to put you in touch with someone who has that breed. And so they're great sources. Social media is fantastic, obviously, but I kind of laughingly said to a few people that, as I'm coming over this side of the country, or in the middle, wherever it is, that I'm meeting someone else to be able to pick up chickens to be able to take back with me. And surely any farmer's trip across the country has always got some kind of animals with them to take back or move somewhere else. Our own stock, yeah, we have breeding stock. We have our own bull and we have our own rams. Obviously, you know, if you keep your own boys, you've got issues there. So we're very careful with right now we've got 3 different breeding groups in 3 different very wet fields with 3 different rams, and they all get back together and being friends, even though they've just been with each other's daughters and granddaughters, but we don't talk about that. And so with the chickens, with the poultry, I do... a big part of our farm is allowing the animals to exhibit their natural behaviours, and so when our chickens go broody, we kind of see if they're serious about it, as in, the peck test to see if they really will. If they peck you when you go to get the eggs, then we'll give them some eggs, because we run cockerels with our chickens, and then that produces some really lovely, diverse ones. So. And there's a lot more to learn about that if you go back and look on YouTube of Groundswell workshop from summer, Poultry 101, there's a few conversations about that in there. So it's worth having a look at that one. So, yeah. Okay.
I'm going to take a question now from the live stream audience, which is to follow up with Tom Adams' point, but to all speakers. How do you think small producers can be part of the outscaling of agrobiodiversity?
What's outscaling?
I don't know what outscaling is. Maybe it's upscaling they mean.
Anyone know what outscaling means? Upscaling. Okay. Okay. Well, I feel like my system, and certainly at Wakelands, I think that can be scaled up to hundreds of acres, hundreds of hectares quite easily. Yeah, I think, you know, mine's on a 6.5 acre site. Yours is 23 hectares. Yeah, you could just keep going. Yeah, if you've got the market there, or, you know, you can make the market.
Question. So let's have another one from here and then go back to it rather than in case there is a specific thing we've missed. Okay, cool, thank you. Yeah, the back there at the very back. Yeah.
Thanks very much. I'm really interested in storytelling and record keeping. So one of the nuggets I pulled from the talk was that the brown eggs aren't doing very well at the moment, but the white ones and blue ones are. How do you, A, keep the records of that and retain those records, and then tell those stories so that they are meaningful for people and people learn from your examples?
Thank you. Yeah, I love the stories. I think it's stories. And I think I learned that from here, actually. The stories that you hear from here are so powerful. You know, statistics can be amazing, but it's hearing people's stories. Record keeping, I think, like all good, busy farmers, could do better. And so it's in my memory, which is always a bit of a dodgy space to be stored, have anything stored. But I have a book like this for each year. And in here is my brain and all sorts of lists and records and stuff, and then ridiculous spreadsheets as well. So there is stuff. But the storytelling, I think, is really important. I think through social media, we have such a good opportunity. So any of you that are farming or going into farming and aren't currently doing things on social media, try and embrace that if you can, or get someone else to do it for you, because you won't realise the incredible story that you have. And it's very easy to be stuck in our fields, in our mud, in our space, doing our thing, and realise that there are so many consumers out there who want to have that connection. And I really learnt that through lockdown. I made a commitment in lockdown that I did a social media post every day, and I could, because I wasn't doing all the other crazy things of taking kids to things that you had to do, because it's the modern day life, isn't it? And so by doing that, I had so many people contacting me, and really heartfelt thanks for people who were, you know, shut up without access to gardens, without access to nature, and I was just trying to put posts up each day. So yeah, tell the story however you can. If it's not through social media, just, yeah, having contact with actual humans is always a good thing as well. Weird, isn't it? But there. Have we heard from online?
Yes, we have an update on upscaling, which is it's a way of talking about upscaling, but as opposed to the hegemony which comes with large-scale agriculture. So I guess it's about how do you, beyond doing the thing that you're doing in your land, how do we make more people do it, make it more popular, make the conversation shift, and yeah, in a way that's outwards rather than upwards, infinite growth. Yeah? Okay, cool.
I guess a lot comes down to sharing knowledge, and places like RFC nurturing those spaces. In terms of learning from agroforestry, there's something called Agroforestry Open Weekend that is now international, and it happens every year in May. So there's a website, and it's on Instagram, so you can look out for that in terms of agroforestry knowledge. Yeah, and then there's things like the Land Skills Fair with the LWA. In terms of like cooking and baking with agrobiodiversity and more agroecological food businesses, I'm part of a network called UK Grain Lab, which is bakers and cooks sharing their knowledge with cooking with more localized agroecological ingredients, which is a really wonderful space. So yeah, there's a few there. But yeah, I'd say just try and be open. I was going from London to this. I was completely sort of, I didn't know where to go, but I reached out really. You just got to follow that interest you have and trust it and be brave, I think.
Sorry if that was me. So I think there is something amazing about the time that we're in, because I've said it for a while that we're living in a quiet revolution, that this stuff is happening on so many farms. across the country and across the world, but we're starting to learn to communicate to each other about it and start to realise that we've got something to share. So I'm going to do a pitch for the Pasture for Life. There's a fantastic organisation. If you're not already a member, just join. It's a no-brainer. It's cheaper than Netflix, so just do it. But there's fantastic work by these amazing people called regional facilitators. There's a marvellous one in East Midlands. She's great. But what we do is put on events all over the country, and it's not like it's beautifully simple. We talk to one of our fantastic farmers and go, could you handle 10 or 20 people coming around and walking around your field while you just talk non-stop about your farm? And have you ever heard a farmer who doesn't want to talk about their farm? So we do it, and we learn so much from walking around each other's farms and just sharing stories and sharing knowledge. And so it is already happening. It's just that we need to communicate about it better, and it's incredible the influence that it has, even on the most staunch neighbours and family members who wouldn't ever do anything like that. But, oh, look, someone over there's doing it. That's quite interesting. So, you know, there's a lot of people listening, and I thought it was fascinating in the plenary this morning when we heard that the other conference is talking about diversity. You know, there's a lot of, I think there's so much we can do about dropping the labels of whether we're organic, biodynamic, permaculture, conventional, whatever it is. It's just learning to share these stories with each other, but also share the examples. So it's happening. We just need to talk to each other about it. So, do you want to say no? No? Okay.
Hey, right. Other questions? Yes, this gentleman here.
Thank you very much. It's heartening to hear from all of you about your very diversified businesses. I'd like to ask all of you if you have any advice to a farmer who's already as diversified as much as you can with one person and partner to open up their business for opportunities for people to grow hemp, grow cut flowers and other things that you're all doing on your farms. How do we connect with those people? How do we welcome them into our fold, into our trust? It's a big step.
I'll try. I think with Wakelands, with getting all the different enterprises there, a lot was word of mouth. For me it was word. I started using the YQ population, and then I visited the farm. And similarly with the veg growers, I think they heard about it on Wakelands' website, so perhaps putting the word out on if you have a website, Instagram is always helpful. Local community centres, notice boards. That probably all sounds quite obvious, but yeah, I'd say word of mouth. And there's also like the LWA and ORFC. They often do online newsletters with advertisements and sort of call-outs and things. So maybe putting something in those.
Did the people come to you with their ideas, or did you say, I would like somebody to grow meat chickens on my farm, I have space, and I'd like to diversify more? Or do they come to you saying, I'd like to do that? Does that make sense? I don't want to say, here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like someone to come to me and say, I've got this idea, let's do it, and go from there.
I think at Wakelands it's worked because it's mostly been people coming to David and Amanda with their ideas, and David and Amanda being incredibly generous and sort of listening to their ideas, but then them having a discussion about. So it's an interaction between the two.
Yeah, so I started out by putting an advert on the Soil Association, some Soil Association forum, asking for a veg grower. I wanted veg to be grown on site. I don't have time to do it myself, so and felt there was space for a couple of other businesses to work on site. So the guy that grows the chamomile came to me through that advert. The people that grow the cut flowers and the veg, they just happened to be friends of friends. They were just people out there looking for stuff, and it came through chatting with them. It was quite simple, really, from that point of view. But I think because there was that keenness of people, and it worked well. I didn't charge anybody for the first 2 or 3 years, I think, just to see how it goes. And yeah, now I'm charging £200 each per business, and yeah, it works well. I think it's a bit like I seem to give more of a shit about the place than everyone else, and you know, there's stuff being left everywhere, or like docks going to seed next to the cropping space. So there's a bit of management to go on, going on, but I think the key is to, I guess, get everybody on board. You know, it's all about creating good, healthy soil and leaving the soil bare for as short a time as possible, and getting everyone on board and talking about your principles and, you know, what the place is about. But yeah, it definitely takes a little bit of policing at times, but it's well worth it from the community aspect.
Great. So I think we've got time for one short question.
Will match up people who are looking to start enterprises with people who have land. So it's probably worth contacting your council. I don't know if yours are any good. Bristol's brilliant. Like, you know, quite a lot of the councils that you'd expect are very good. But it's definitely worth contacting your council to see if they've got anything going. That was it.
There's 2 sessions here. On one is land speed dating, and one is about farm sharing. And so those would be good places to look to.
Great. So great to hear some of the questions and some of the answers all together in the same room. So thanks very much to everyone for coming. Thank you, the amazing speakers. Thank you for your attendance, and off you go and have a lovely lunch. See you in the afternoon.